The bright side of addiction is recovery. If you're in recovery or know someone who is, or simply want to know more about the recovery process, this podcast is for you. You can find all of our podcasts, by the way, at recoverycoasttocoast.org. Now, in this edition, I sit down with one half of the amazing musical duo from Wales, the Black Feathers, currently on tour in the United States. Their tour schedule, by the way, is at theblackfeathers.com. Ray Hughes, who grew up in Dublin, linked up with a then-aspiring actress, Shan Chandler, and together they set out to write, record, and make soul-satisfying music. Ray recovers out loud, on stage, sharing recovery with every audience he plays for. He has 12 years in long-term recovery. They've recorded an amazing song called Holy Water, which took close to 7 years to complete. It pays homage to one day at a time recovery. You can find that, by the way, in the show notes of this podcast. Ray will share the challenges for a touring musician in recovery. It's a fascinating look behind the curtain. And we'll close out the podcast with some inspiring reflections from award-winning actor and a person in long-term recovery, the great Dick Van Dyke. Recovery is as recovery does. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast, our website, recoverycoasttocoast.org. You can find all the podcasts there. And following 15 years of nightly broadcasting on iHeartRadio in Seattle, we have now upgraded to a national podcast, which is available to anyone at any time, featuring interviews with everyday people in recovery, as well as clinicians and authors, recovering celebrities, newsmakers, people who offer the promise of hope and the reality of recovery, plus well-vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends. And we invite you to enjoy the podcast and share it with your friends. Recovery is an American way of life. A reminder, our email if you want to be in touch, and we'd love to hear from you, recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Recovery Coast to Coast, supported by the good folks at Sundown M Ranch, one of the oldest and most successful and affordable treatment centers in America. They've been successfully treating well over 200,000 adolescents, adults, and families for the past 54 years. Residential treatment at Sundown is important because, frankly, it allows an individual to focus uninterrupted on their treatment, on getting well, on discovering the reality of recovery from addiction, and not just getting into recovery, but staying in recovery, maintaining that one-day-at-a-time lifestyle. Individuals learn and practice new skills for living in a very supportive environment. And their continuing care program at Sundown, following residential treatment, is among the best in the country. They don't simply treat and release. They provide a bridge, a solid bridge, into the community of recovery, wherever the individual lives. And they've treated men, women, and adolescents from all over the country, hell, all over the world. Now, if you have a few minutes, you might want to check out their website, which has their history, philosophy of treatment, and some amazing photos of their facility. It's a nonprofit facility. They own their own property. It's at the mouth of the Yakima River Canyon. Sundown.org, where recovery becomes reality. A few days ago, I sat down with Ray Hughes. He's one half of the Wales-based music duo, the Black Feathers. By the way, there are a few links in the show notes to a few of their songs. And we welcome you to Recovery Coast to Coast. Great to have you with us. Visiting with Ray Hughes, one half of the Black Feathers. We're going to be talking a lot about music. We're going to be talking a lot about recovery. Ray is a guy in long-term recovery. I believe he said the other night, 12 years. My partner and I got to see him the other night. Ray Hughes, welcome to Recovery Coast to Coast. 12 years?
12 years. Thanks for having me.
Wow, a newcomer.
Yeah, I still consider myself one, yes.
Some great songs from the Black Feathers, and one in particular called Holy Water. And the lyric goes something like, I've been looking for redemption and finally gave it up, but it found me. It did find you, didn't it?
It did very much. Yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning or the end, as it were, some 12 years ago. What was life like before you went into the rooms?
Lonely, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I was kind of lucky, in a strange way, insofar as I don't feel like I hit a rock bottom, more saw myself
Mm.
falling towards it, or it coming to hit me rather. I don't know why or how. I don't pretend to have the answer to this, but I managed to make the decision before it got that bad.
And this happened before the start of the Black Feathers.
Yes, it did. We were myself and my wife Shan. Well, my now wife, she wasn't then, but we were playing as a covers duo, playing in bars and.
Just to annoy you.
Well, that was that. Was, so
Little context here.
we're going even further back. So just to annoy Ray was the first band that we played in together.
And you would be that Ray.
I am the titular Ray.
And
yes.
you were annoyed?
Yes. The story with the name, we had a show coming up and we'd rehearsed and written all the songs, but we didn't have a name, and I was kind of blackballing everything that was suggested, and they decided in my absence one day to call us Just to Annoy Ray, and submitted it to the event. And the first I heard of it was the poster.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
With the name on it.
How long did Just to Annoy Ray last, Ray?
I think 4 or 5 years. We put out 2 EPs. We were kind of a 5-piece folk rock band with an emphasis on the rock.
Mm.
It was kind of more Guns N' Roses than it was Bob Dylan.
How did you and Sean meet?
I was very drunk.
Here we
were,
go.
yeah,
What it was like.
Yeah, we were at a gig. I was very drunk. She thought I was loud and obnoxious because, to be honest, I was loud and obnoxious. But then she married me, and it's all turned out all right.
You did not go through treatment. You just went into the rooms.
Correct.
What precipitated that?
Before I got sober, I set myself a rule. Like I was drinking way too much. I knew I was drinking way too much, and I just said, right, I'm not going to drink in the house. I'm going to simple rule. I'm not going to drink in the house, and if I break this rule, I'm done. This was how it worked. So I drank a lot, not in the house,
in the yard, down the street, in the clubs.
Exactly that. So I think I kept all the bars in business in our little hometown. But there came a day when I'd done a favor for a friend. I'd fixed a laptop, and I was delivering it back to him, and he gave me a bottle of wine. So we went out for a drink. Just hadn't seen him in a while, and he came back up to mine, and we cracked open the bottle of wine, and chaos ensued. And I woke up the next morning, and just carnage, where my front room was, and I just had this moment of honesty, this moment of clarity, where I went, right, I'm done.
That would be wreckage of the present.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Yeah, it was. I describe it as a moment of clarity because I think it's the only way that it makes sense to me. I kind of saw how I was living and what life was like, and I just went, nah, I can't do this anymore.
What did you do at that point?
I kind of had a bit of a breakdown, and I was kind of in tears. I called Shan actually because she was the only person that was around, and I said, "Can you just come over? I just need somebody here." And she came around, and we went through it all and agreed that I'd been drinking a bit too much, and
Was she aware of the depths of your disease at that point?
I don't think so. I think I hid it from her quite well. I hid it from a lot of people, although I imagine everybody saw it.
Yeah.
But I don't think she was quite aware of how bad it was. I was drinking every night. Most days from about lunchtime. That was kind of standard fare.
Did anybody say, Ray, you need to do something about your drinking?
Numerous occasions throughout the years it had been mentioned, and you'd go through these phases of not drinking for a month, and then that means I'm okay because I can stop, all this kind of nonsense. I guess like I said, you don't really see it yourself until you have that moment of clarity, that moment of honesty where you kind of go, oh, this is what it's actually like. This is what people see.
And you have to do something.
Yeah.
Did you know what to do? Did you know who to call? Did you know where to go?
Well, thankfully, I had a friend, my closest friend, was in recovery. I think he was 20 2 years in. I just called him up and we went and had coffee. Well, I spent 2 weeks kind of white knuckling it. Had this very strange experience when I'd be walking down the street past a bar or whatever and feel this kind of pull.
Ray.
Yeah, it was even worse. It was like something reached out and grabbed me and kind of was pulling me in. It was so strange. But I spoke to my friend and we went and had coffee and sat down and I said to him, remember my question to him was, why do you go to AA? And he kind of grinned and said, well, you'll just have to come and find out. And there were some complications regarding that. There were people in the rooms that perhaps wouldn't be very keen on seeing me, but that was sorted out when I walked around the corner and bumped straight into them, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is happening. I got no choice anymore.
I often say there are no coincidences; there are God incidences.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And there you were. What was that first meeting like for you?
Amazing. I don't know if somebody had kind of tipped them off that I was coming, but the guy who was doing the main share basically told my story, and I was like, oh, I'm with the right people here. It was very strange.
The first year, the first 6 months usually are very, very challenging for someone going into recovery. What was it like for you, and were you playing music at the time?
So we were playing music. As I mentioned earlier, we were playing in a duo. This was after Just to Annoy Ray, and we were playing covers in bars and restaurants and all that. And I was fine with it for a time. I think it was maybe 6 months in. Came up to Christmas, and the Christmas party season started, and oh my God, I was like, I was gonna hurt someone. And I had to get out of it. I couldn't cope with it anymore. But that was 6 months later. The first few weeks were actually okay. Once I got past the white knuckle 2 weeks, and I'd been to meetings regularly, I don't know why, it just clicked for me. Everything just fell into place.
You started working the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a big difference between going to meetings and working the program.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you took a little hiatus around Christmas time then from the music.
Yeah, we just canceled all of our shows. I'm done with this environment. I don't want to be anywhere near this anymore. And we decided that we would start focusing on writing our own music. And I think we got married the February of the following year. So 2 months later we got married, and we went on honeymoon and designed the band logo, and I made a website. It's the most unromantic honeymoon you can possibly imagine, but that's what we did. And then we started writing some music. And
alcoholism is certainly a family disease, and people get as sick or sicker, and they need to recover as well. Unfortunately, Sean is not able to be with us at this moment, but what was it like for her through your eyes in those first 30, 60, 90 days?
Well, she was actually on holiday when I went to my first meetings. And she got a bit of a shock when she came back.
There's a new man in my room.
yeah. I joined some kind of cult. But I think she struggled with it for the first few weeks because the person that she knew wasn't around anymore. We used to go drinking all the time, and now we're not going drinking at all.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit of adjusting for her, but I think she got it. She knew it had to happen. She was around some of the darker times, and it took a little while for her to adjust, but we've adjusted, and it's all good.
And so you went into the rooms. Did you get a sponsor?
I did, but after it was probably maybe 6 months in before I got a sponsor. He was tough on me. He didn't take any. I don't want to swear on your podcast.
No, don't say shit, please. Please don't say shit on the podcast.
He didn't take any. But for one reason or another, that it didn't work out quite as either of us anticipated for one reason or another. And then my second sponsor, we were working the program, and then he moved to Qatar, and that made it quite difficult to continue. Well, yeah, he's a lovely guy still. We still chat. I love him dearly.
Nice. So you marry Sean, and you start writing your own songs. At what point did the Holy Water song emerge? How long did it take? And what does it mean to you today when you sing that at every show?
It took a long time to write. We had this strange writing arrangement where we we could never write together. We'd never write in the same room. We'd have separate studios, different sides of town, and send ideas back and forth. And we won't tell each other what we're writing about. We'll leave it up to each other to decide what the songs are about. But obviously, in this case, it's quite obvious what it's about, and it's quite obviously something that initially had to come from me. And I felt it took me a long time to kind of get the words together to get it down. I would always sneak little phrases into songs, like, you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, like stuff like this. I would drop those into songs every now and again, and I wouldn't tell, and I'd have a little snigger to myself inside. And But Holy Water took maybe 6-7 years to get together.
Wow.
It took a long time. Well, we played this. We played a show in Nashville. We were in the chapel of a rehab facility for recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, and I was 6 years sober the night of that show, and my friend had organized it such that he would be able to give me a medal and all that stuff, and a beautiful setting.
So it was a birthday meeting.
It was, and on tour, which is, meetings on tour can be interesting.
We'll get to that later. Go ahead.
But that was the show, and we just had some time off later on in the tour, and I was like, that's maybe this is the moment to get this song together. And it came together really quickly. I think we had it finished in a week, which for us is quite quick. And so, and singing it now, it's still, it's one day at a time. It's still the same song as it was 6 years ago. You know what I mean?
You're very open on stage as you introduce that song, and I might add that in the show notes for this podcast, you will find a version of Holy Water that actually I shot at Bill Lippy's house concert series in Seattle. But you're very open as you introduce it, that you are, in fact, a recovering alcoholic, and you've got now 12 years. During the break, after the show, what kind of reaction do you get from people?
There's usually another friend of Bill in the room.
Thank you.
That's
They're everywhere, Ray.
Absolutely. So you always get that person come up and give you a kind of a knowing wink and go, 25.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But every now and again you'll have a very different reaction. We've played shows where people have left the room in the middle of the song, and I heard from the organizer afterwards, there was a woman left and was in tears on the steps while
goodness.
You were singing that, and I'm like, wow, that's and you wish you could speak to them, or they'd come up and let you know, and maybe you could help in some way. But then you've also got, people will reach out and say, your song helped me get sober, or it's helped me through my early days. It's everything that you can ever want as a songwriter.
Yeah. And that woman on the stairs crying, you don't know what happened to her.
No.
And where her life went. And maybe that song was the inspiration for something positive in her life. I often say the bright side of addiction is recovery.
Absolutely.
And when people see that and they can aspire to that, and they say, God, if Ray Hughes from the Black Feathers can get sober and can go on tour, maybe there's some hope for me.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of interviews with fairly famous people, famous musicians, Bonnie Raitt, for example. I know at least 24 people who attribute their sobriety to Bonnie Raitt.
Wow.
Saying, wow, if she could do it and be that open, maybe there's hope for me.
That's it. I know one person for sure, because he's reached out to me, and we're good friends, and he said he thanks me regularly.
Nice.
For
in terms of going to meetings, how do meetings differ in Gloucestershire, which is where you live now, and in the U.S., in other parts of the U.K., in Dublin, where you were from? In Ireland, of course, you find four alcoholics. You always find a fifth.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Although I've not actually been to a meeting in Dublin. We've not managed to do much touring over there. So we've actually just moved from Gloucestershire as well. We now live in a little village called Cummaman in Wales. And there isn't a meeting in our little village. There isn't a meeting in our nearest town. So it's a bit of a trek to get to the nearest meeting. But
do you do any online meetings?
I haven't actually. I've been meaning to, and we've been so busy since we moved. It's not been on my radar at all, and I really should look into it.
So how do the meetings differ then from the UK to the US?
Do you know they don't really?
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
basically the same people in a different room.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
The beauty, Ray, is no matter where you go in the freaking world,
Yeah,
you can find friendship, fellowship, AA.
yeah,
I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
it's true. Certainly in the south, meetings are a little bit more cuddly, which is kind of nice.
Cuddly meetings. He likes cuddly meetings.
Yeah. Probably not anymore, but when I was there last, it was definitely a very friendly bunch.
What is it? What is the songwriting process for you and Sean? Do you still do it separately?
We've started working together a lot more, mainly out of necessity because
Mm-hmm.
we no longer live where we have two studios. But it's evolved, and I think we understand each other a little bit better now. And as long as we respect each other's methods,
Space, yeah.
and it comes together quite quickly now. We still do the thing where we don't tell each other what we're writing about. I
Mm.
think that will never end. That will never stop.
She was an aspiring actress at the beginning, was she not?
She studied theater. Yeah, that was her main
So the
gig.
actress met the musician.
Well, I think she'd gone to a slightly strange uh, college to study theater. They kind of a lot of experimental stuff. It wasn't a traditional
Mhm,
drama school
mhm.
or anything like that. And I think she fairly quickly realized that it wasn't quite what she wanted to do, and then came home, and it was literally when she'd been home for like a month or something like that
Mm.
that we met, and she put a band together, and I joined the band, and then they called it Just to Annoy Ray.
I love that name. How has recovery affected your music, your songwriting in particular? Have you written other songs besides Holy Water that may have a wink and a nod to the fellowship?
Well, I hadn't before I got sober. I hadn't written a song since I was about 16.
Really?
Yeah, so I'd spent basically 16 years playing guitar and then playing covers. And even in the early days of the band and of my recovery, I didn't really write songs. I would contribute in some way
Hmm.
to Shan would put them together, and I would chime in every now and again. And it took me a while to kind of find the courage to put my feelings and my ideas to songs. It took quite a while to get that together. Holy Water was probably the first time where I
Hmm.
kind of stepped forward and said, "I'm writing a song.
This is it.
Yeah, this is going to be. We're going to start here. I feel like it's an appropriate topic. It's a big enough topic, and if I can write a song about this, I can write a song about anything. That's kind of how it feels."
Talk about the song "The Ghosts Have Eaten Well."
Yes, it's a song about getting old. That was a strange one. So Shan had this. She'd remembered this TV show from Australia. This is really random. So there was I can't, was it round, might have been Round the Twist, I think it was. And there was an episode where they talked about ghosts eating sunsets. This was how ghosts fed. They would eat sunsets. And for me, it's a really interesting idea. And I interpret it to be that those ghosts, yeah, every day they eat, and the older the ghost gets, the more it's well fed. So
Yeah,
this is kind of the
yeah.
idea. And yeah, that was a fun song to put together because I suggested the ghosts have eaten well to Shan as the song. She was like, "What? I was like, you remember that weird TV show that you were talking about?"
How often do you write, you and Sean?
We're not very prolific. We
Mm,
are. It's one of these things like writing on the road, not a thing. And
really?
it's really difficult. Yeah, Holy Water once again being one of the rare examples where a song came together on the road. But when we're on the road, writing is just not something that we have in the front of our minds at all. We have to find some downtime. I always write better when I'm tired. Weirdly enough, I like to be in that strange space
Hmm.
between waking and sleeping, and then that's when the ideas come. Previously, you just go get drunk or stoned, but it doesn't really work like that
Yeah, it
anymore.
does not. No, no, you have to lean into
Yeah,
recovery.
exactly.
Who's been the most helpful to you in your recovery?
My friend that first took me into the
Mm,
rooms, he's been a rock. He's been great. He was best man at our wedding.
nice.
He did a lot of our photography. He's just been an absolute legend. So
Talk about the challenges of touring as a recovering alcoholic.
it's the little things. It's missing the turn on the freeway and losing your mind, and or you're going to be late to a show, or you're going to, it's just the little stressful moments. They're the bits that really wind me up. The big things, I'm kind of all right with. Somebody's gets sick at home, you're just like, well, either you make the decision to either go back or you don't, or Shan's gran died when we were on tour, and we had to have that conversation. It's like, hey, if you need to go back, you go back. It's fine. Just that's easy to deal with. It's little things like spilling a can of water in the car. That's when the thing you snap and you go.
And which gets back to an axiom in the program of HALT. Don't get hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Absolutely.
Who are your musical heroes, and who are maybe some of your recovery heroes?
I can roll both into one. In a few instances, Jason Isbell is I'm a huge fan of. His Southeastern record was a big influence in me writing my first songs. When you hear somebody be that open about recovery, it's a real special thing. And then there was that Chris Stapleton song, Whiskey and You, beautiful song. In terms of, my musical education is kind of odd. It's kind of varied. I come from a classical household, so I played flute and recorder as a kid, and I didn't get into pop or rock music until much later. I got my first guitar when I was 15, and I was listening to all the Seattle grunge bands. That was kind of my thing.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. And then it got louder and nastier from there.
Wow. You do a lot of covers, and you did one, and I'm curious as to how you decide which covers to do. You did one the other night that took me back to my rock and roll days. I was a rock and roll disc jockey for many, many years. And I remember the day that I first played Norman Greenbaum, Spirit in the Sky. And when you rolled that out the other night, I got chills. I said, holy crap. Tell me about, not about the writing of the song, because you didn't write it, but the choosing of the song and the arrangement of the song. You make it your own.
It's central to any cover that we do. We've got people are saying, oh, you could do a great cover of Civil Wars or Gillian Welch and Dave Grohl, and it's just like, yeah, but we're not going to do it any better than them. Right. Why? Let's not even try that. So we tried it every night. If we're going to pick a cover, actually we don't usually set out to pick covers. Spirit in the Sky was one where we met with a producer who suggested we find a forgotten classic and make it our own. And we're like, okay, what classifies as a forgotten classic? That's an interesting question, right?
And we used to call those in radio, in rock and roll radio, one-hit wonders.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I mean, what else has Norman Greenbaum ever done?
He doesn't mind, though, I'm sure.
No, I'm sure he doesn't. When the postman comes every week and delivers those checks. So did you find it, or did the producer find it?
We found it. We were just sat having coffee, and it just came on the radio, and we were just like, and I was like, I reckon I can make this happen. I reckon this will work. This will be really cool. And we were playing around with that kind of slightly kind of boom chick kind of guitar parts anyway. And I was like, yeah, this will work. This will sound good. And every now and again we hear it now, and it's like, oh yeah, it's in a major key. I forgot about that.
Details.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, details. You do make it your own. I will also put that one up in the show notes as well. Are there slippery places that you play? I mean, certainly you play a lot of house concerts, but you play a lot of places where there's a lot of alcohol around.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't bother me on the most part. There will definitely come a time where things can get a little hairy, and you're like, right, I'm out of here, I'm done. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of house concerts we've played where it got over the edge fairly early. And I was out. I was like, we've been offered to stay there, and I was like, nope, I don't need it. I don't need this in my life. I need to be anywhere else but here. But most of the time, actually, drinking in the US doesn't seem to be quite as excessive as it is in the UK. It's quite funny. First time we were in Nashville, and our friends were like, oh my God, he's so drunk, and there's all these drunk people. And I was like, you ain't seen shit. you, you want to go to Bristol on a Friday night? I'll show you some drinking. Oh my God, it's horrendous.
Wow. What advice do you have for musicians that may be listening to this that are concerned that, gosh, if I stop drinking, I will lose my creativity. I won't be able to handle it. I will be a different person and I won't like it.
You will be a different person, but you will like it. Like, this is the thing. You will. I got a level of focus that I'd never had, a level of ambition that I'd never really had. Like the idea that I could pick up where my 18-year-old self left off, and feel that focused and driven about something was quite remarkable. It made a big difference to me. In terms of the creativity, you just got to find new ways, because the old ways don't work. You think they work, they don't. I remember when we were playing with the band, we'd get drunk and stoned, and we'd play around things for 15 minutes, think we're Pink Floyd, and then you listen back to it and you're just like, man, what are we doing? This is just rubbish. You find new ways, you create new pathways. There's always another way.
And I did an interview with a guy named Barnaby Conrad, a very famous writer. He wrote a book called Time Is All We Have, My Time at the Betty Ford Center, which is a treatment center here in the U.S. And he was working with an architect, and the architect was afraid that he would lose his creativity. And he said, just try it. You can always go back to drinking. And it was that phrase that got him to try it. He goes, oh, that's right.
That's true. That is true. I wouldn't recommend it.
No, but for some people, we use the term in this country a lot in treatment centers of relapse prevention. I don't like to use that term. I like to call it recovery enhancement. I want to know what your recovery is like today, and how much better you are today than you were yesterday, and how much growth you will have next week compared to this week. Enhance your recovery.
Absolutely.
Because just as addiction, active addiction, is progressive in a destructive way, recovery should be progressive in a positive way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To be able to move forward and accept life on life's terms. And yes, you're going to spill the can of Coke in the car. Yes, you're going to miss that freaking off ramp. You know what? You deal with it.
That's it, man. That's it. And like I said, there's the stressful moments. You're running late and you miss a turn and shit's just going wrong. And you're just trying to keep that together. And it sounds so inconsequential and so simple, but yeah, you just got to try, and that's the stuff I got to work on, on a daily basis.
The little things.
The little things, man.
Yeah. For those who have seen the Black Feathers, for those who will see the Black Feathers, and if you Google them or put up YouTube and find them there, you will see that they perform with a very interesting microphone. How did that come to be, and why?
So the microphone it's an Ear Trumpet Labs Myrtle. Ear Trumpet Labs are, I think, based out of Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing a show in Warrenton, Virginia, a place called Drum and Strum. A friend of mine who's also in recovery actually had arranged the show, and he produced this. He said, "I've got this new mic. Produced this ear trumpet. Do you mind trying it out for me?" We were like, hell yes, and this looks great. I think we sang 4 bars into it each and went, yeah, this is great. We're going to get one of these. So yeah, we bought one. We've been using it now for 5 or 6 years. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah, we love it.
You got a new CD coming out, and strange name, Angel Dust and Cyanide.
Yes, sir.
There's got to be a story there, Ray.
There is. Angel Dust and Cyanide is kind of our way of describing life as a touring and recording musician. It's trying in some way to describe the highs and lows of being a musician. Because when it's good, it's the best thing in the world. But when it's bad, man, soul crushingly bad.
Yeah.
When it's bad, you always remember the bad review, and it eats away to the core of you, you can't get that. I mean, COVID was an absolute kick in the face for us. I mean, we were 1 month into a 5-month tour, and We invested, I don't know, I think we were $8,000 or $10,000 in a hole before we started, and it
Wow.
all cancelled. We just lost a ton of money, and I appreciate a bunch of people who were in that situation, but that's the soul crushing lows, and so yeah, we tried to cap. That's what Angelus and Cyanide, the song, is about, and we kind of felt it was appropriate for the album. Although we appreciate some people may file us under metal with with an album name like that.
Will they be surprised?
Yeah, right.
What are some of the songs on the CD, and are they originals, covers?
It's all originals with the exception of a cover of Glory Box by Portishead. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of miserable songs on there. There's a couple of cheery ones too, but it's all
real life, Ray.
Exactly
real
right.
life. Wow. And it's all about today. It's all about one day at a time, one gig at a time, one CD at a time.
Yeah.
It seems to be for musicians harder these days in selling CDs. I mean, it can be used as drink coasters, I guess, but a lot of the cars, don't have CDs. You're still selling them on the road, though, right?
Well, this is the first tour where we've really noticed it. I think for some reason up until now it's been okay.
Yeah.
But maybe COVID is, the lockdowns and whatnot have changed how people view material things. They've cleaned stuff out rather than hoarding more of it. Cars no longer have CD players. People are still buying vinyl, which is quite nice, and we have our little digital USB cassette things. But yeah, CDs are definitely in decline, and that's worrying.
In selling CDs at a gig, people can have something in their hand. You can sign it for them. Hard to sign a thumb drive.
Well, indeed.
and hard to carry around a vinyl. But with a CD, it's a nice thing and a nice remembrance of a time that they spent 2 hours, 2.5 hours with the Black Feathers.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but like I say, I think it's hard to convince somebody that doesn't have a CD player to buy a CD. I get it.
Yeah.
I worry for the future, certainly future generations of musicians. I mean, how are you going to earn a crust? How are you going to convince somebody to make that recording?
Right.
When there's no way to sell it.
Yeah.
How can you recover the money? Recording's expensive.
Yeah.
So
the challenges of, as you say, traveling, recording, being a musician in this day and age. You've been doing it for a while. What do you see yourself doing 5 years from now?
Probably still doing this, to be honest with you. Hopefully doing it less and still earning the same. That'd be kind of the ideal. I don't think we're ever gonna be on Tonight Show or anything like that. I don't think
there's going to be a Tonight Show in 5 years, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, what we do, it works in small spaces. That's when it's at its most effective.
The power of a house concert is absolutely magical.
It is, absolutely. And yeah, I wouldn't trade this for anything.
People come to listen. They're quiet. There's no tinkling of glasses. There's no alcohol by and large. And there's an intimacy that is just absent in the bigger rooms.
It is, absolutely, and certainly like when you compare it to festivals and whatnot, there's no comparison.
Right.
Like the festival experience it's a completely different thing. I don't think you've seen a band really if you've seen them at a festival.
Right.
It's a different. You got to see them in an enclosed space.
Right.
Have the sound bouncing off the walls at you.
Right.
Feel it in your chest.
I had a situation where I guess about 4 years ago, McCartney came through town, played at the big arena in Seattle, and I was doing sports on KJR, and one of the salesmen came in and said, "I've got 2 tickets tonight to see McCartney in the private suite at Key Arena, and I'd like you to have them."
Wow.
And I said, "I appreciate that very much." I said, "I love Paul McCartney, I really do. But I'm going to decline because I'm going to a house concert at my friend Bill's. He has a Canadian trio of singers that I really want to see." And he looked at me like I just lost my freaking mind. And he said, Okay. I said, if I go to the Key Arena, number one, it's going to be a hassle getting there. There's going to be thousands of people. It's going to be in a suite, and there'll be free, food and drink. But we're still going to be watching on a big screen. I mean, you'll see him down there. You're paying for the luxury of being in the same zip code as Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
I would rather have a nice video, a nice DVD, and sit and watch it up close from different angles, rather than sitting, up above, looking down, just being a part of, when I can be at a house concert, that I can be in an intimate relationship with the artists.
Yeah, it's a totally different prospect, and it's one that I will never give up.
Yeah,
it's great.
I talked to one of the singers that night and told her the story, and she said, "Well, why don't you take my place? I'll take your tickets. See you tomorrow." So there you go. House concerts are just absolutely wonderful. I have appreciated this time, Ray, and I appreciated your candor, not only in this interview, but on stage when you publicly recover out loud.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it helps me a lot. To I don't know. It helps. There's always a wall between you and the audience, and I think if you can, give yourself completely.
Yeah, be vulnerable.
Exactly. Just be honest on stage, and talk about what's going on. Like, treat it like a meeting.
Right. Exactly.
And all of a sudden, everybody in the room is with you, and it doesn't matter the size of the room that you're playing. You can make it feel like a meeting. Right.
Recovery is as recovery does, and you do it very well.
Thank you.
Keep trudging that happy road to destiny. Check out the show notes. There are a number of songs, including Holy Water from the Black Feathers. And our regards to Sean, and I hope to see you down the road.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Special thanks to Ray Hughes, one half of the award-winning and international music duo, the Black Feathers. TheBlackFeathers.com is their website, and I urge you to listen to some of their music, especially their anthem of recovery, Holy Water. I put a link in the show notes to a number of their songs, including Holy Water. Coming up next, Dick Van Dyke checks in with an inspirational message about self-esteem. Coming up in 30 seconds.
We wasted a lot of years hoping, praying for things to get better. I was desperate to save our family. That's when I made the contact.
She contacted Sundown Am Ranch. Sundown's nationally recognized alcohol and drug treatment program teaches family members how to break down the barriers of denial. They are taught the skills needed to deal with addiction as a family.
Now we're making up for lost time. It was the best contact I ever made.
Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
Never bend your head. Always hold it high. Look the world straight in the face. Helen Keller. As a teenager, I was extremely self-conscious. When I recall those years, I can still feel the emotional pain I endured. One of the most difficult challenges for me was talking face to face with other people. I tried hard to sidestep such confrontations, and when they were unavoidable, I sought refuge in various mannerisms and techniques that I thought were uniquely mine. By staring at a person's forehead, ears, or chin, for example, I could escape eye contact. By performing rituals in lighting and smoking cigarettes, or by faked coughing fits, I could lessen the intensity of my fear and my discomfort. One of the most uplifting aspects of my early recovery was discovering that I was hardly unique in my painful self-consciousness. What a relief to be able to laugh along with others who had developed similar techniques to avoid eye contact. And what a bonus to be able to talk about my low self-esteem and fear of people, and to benefit from others' similar stories. When I stopped trying to hide from people, my self-consciousness gradually diminished. Slowly but surely, my sense of self-worth has risen. Today, one of the most valued freedoms I have is being able to easily and fearlessly talk with other people, and to look them squarely in the eye when I do. Thought for today: the best cure for terminal uniqueness is to see yourself in another.
Before we close things out, we want to remind you about a very special event for people in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest. It's the second annual 12-Step Fun Fest, June 11th. It's going to be at the Oak Tree Cinema in North Seattle. It'll be a giant celebration of recovery, honoring 12-step volunteers who do more for others than they do for themselves. Now, the event will feature a free recovery concert, free private screening of Top Gun 2, and they're going to give away $6,000 in cash. That's June 11th, Oak Tree Cinema, North Seattle. Get all the details at the website 12stepfunfest.com. That wraps up this edition of the national podcast, Recovery Coast to Coast. If you've enjoyed the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Email is recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Website, recoverycoasttocoast.org. Also, please hit the subscribe or follow button. It's free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. Let us know what you like and what you don't like. That helps us to carry the message better, the message of hope, the promise of recovery, especially on social media. And remember, if you know someone who is experiencing problems with alcohol or any other drug, here's a 24-hour national helpline. It offers free information and confidential treatment referrals. Spanish-speaking individuals are available as well. The number is 1-800-622-HELP. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And another shout-out to our sponsoring organization, Sundown M Ranch, successfully treating individuals, adolescents, families for well over 50 years. You'll find them at sundown.org. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, and be kind to others. Remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.